This is the first time that happens on this channel and I'm quite embarrassed, I'd say. Okay guys, in this video we're gonna talk about Telecasters. 4 models, starting from the Squier, going all the way up to the newest top-notch production guitar by Fender. A heated confrontation which, to be completely honest with you, amazed me. It's the first time that this happens on the channel, but before I announce today's models, I would like to invite you to subscribe to my channel, since a huge part of you watching my videos are not. So if you want to help me out, you know what to do. Thanks. Now, we don't waste any more time and let's start discovering today's guitars, which I ordered from strumentimusicali.net, whom I thank to make these videos possible. Off with the cheapest of today's guitars, the Squier Classic Vibe Telecaster, a model enjoying great reputation since it's said that's the bang for the buck among Telecasters. Will the statement be confirmed today? We'll find out. The Squier, made in Indonesia, features a pine body with poly gloss finish, maple neck with a modern C profile, 21 quite comfortable narrow tall frets, and the maple fingerboard has a 9.5-inch radius, not bad either concerning comfort. Bone nut, vintage style tuners and 2 Alnico pickups. Going to the Mexican production line, I've chosen the Vintera model in order to maintain that vintagey Fender type of vibe. In this case, with an older body, with the usual poly gloss finish, a gloss maple neck, which is a chunkier neck with a U profile and a 7.25 inches radius, rounder than the previous one, with vintage style frets, smaller and thinner. Pretty much the same kind of measures that were adopted by Fender at the beginning of the 50s. Synthetic bone nut, vintage style tuners as on the Squier as well, and vintage style 50s pickups. While the Squier does not have any bag, this model comes with a gig bag from Fender. For the Japanese production, I went with this strange Telecaster, a hybrid with a Jazz Master. If you're wondering why I chose this particular model, it's because this guitar has an ash body. The Japanese production often uses basswood to make bodies, and to me this makes an impact on the sound of an instrument, which is less bright and a bit less resonant as well, which goes well on heavier guitars, but on this one I prefer this kind of wood. Oh, if you're curious about what these small squares popping up in the corners are, these are all of your specific requests on videos like this, where I ask you if you have some specific questions in order to answer them here. If you're keen on it, follow me on Instagram to participate. Gloss finish in this amazing Fiesta Red, which isn't too bright actually, maple neck with 9.5 inches radius with a U profile, and narrow tall frets, definitely higher than the vintage style frets. Bone nut and again vintage style tuners and pickups. In conclusion, the last choice and top of the line from Fender among the vintage style production, without looking at the custom shop, is a brand new Fender American Vintage 2. Here we have an ash body, this time with a nice nitro finish, a one-piece maple neck with a 1951 U profile, 7.25 inches radius and 21 vintage tall frets, theoretically taller than the ones on the Vintera. The neck is also nitro finish, and we obviously have a bone nut, vintage Fender tuners and pure vintage 51 pickups. These were roughly the specs, so if you want to read more about them, you can go down below in the description where you can find the spec list and prices and availability. But what you're waiting for is to hear what do these guitars sound like. To me, when I have to choose a tele, it must have a generous amount of twang, namely that clanging sound which is representative of these instruments. I'll let you hear in the next example playing one guitar behind the other so you can hear the differences. Maybe you all have heard that all four of these guitars have this kind of tone, so in this regard they are all good. Some sound clearer, like the Japanese one, and others, like the American vintage, have a warmer tone. I'll let you hear with the neck pickup which kind of sounds they produce, and their differences as well. I'll say also in this case they performed quite well, didn't they? If you already have a favorite one, please let me know in the comment section down below. The Telecaster is surely an instrument with a great personality. Meanwhile, it's really versatile and let us play numerous genres and finds ease of use in loads of production, here playing with the middle position. Let's say that for playing extreme genres like metal, it's not the most used, but thanks to its percussiveness, it can be used to obtain really defined and aggressive tones. Anyway, I bet if I don't play this riff, you'll probably ask me later, so here it is. I chose these guitars because they all have this vintage feel, so they aren't proper race cars, if it makes sense. So if you are looking for an easier to play instrument with extremely low action and super jump frets, you could encounter some difficulties. Speaking of that, so at the beginning of the video I said I was a bit embarrassed for probably the first time on this channel, and I'll tell you why just after the mini song I wrote with these Telecasters. It does have some weird jazzy scales, I hope you like it. Come on, don't skip it. Well, as you know, on this channel I've always dealt with pros and cons of any instrument I reviewed. And I've always highlighted the fact that between cheap and costly instruments, the differences have always been more than relevant. In today's video, I have to admit that it's harder to me to make this consideration. Probably due to the fact that the Telecaster is a simple instrument by itself. All these four guitars are more similar than the ones compared in previous videos. Now, the Squier has clearly a rougher setup, with higher action and a less rich sound, but I don't find any particular differences against the others, even against the American Vintage 2. I'm not saying that a guitar like the American Vintage 2 is a bad guitar. While I was hearing back the audio clips, I noticed a really warm, woody and smooth sound, but if I had to consider the feeling of it, I'm not finding outrageous differences. Even the fret job on the Classic Vibe is perfect. The edge of the neck is smooth and comfy. I have to say this is a really valid guitar, so I have to reconfirm that it's one of the best guitars as value for money goes. Yes, the tuners seem less good to me compared to the American Vintage ones, but with a good setup and few upgrades, this guitar does absolutely justice to itself. Speaking of the Vintera, I have not found any noticeable flaw, but you have to consider that the neck is a little bit chunky. The Japanese is probably my favorite one, because it has a beautiful setup, the Jazzmaster style body is delightful and I find it really well made hybrid, appealing and good sounding. While the American Vintage 2 is surely the neatest of them all, and has a nicer finish and a nice tweed case and so on. But it's the most expensive, and the 725-inch radius it's the most challenging to me to play, also because of the vintage frets. So I recommend it to those who want the closest experience to a custom shop without having to spend the extra money. As always, you can find prices and availability in the links in the description down below. And I thank again strumentimusicali.net, which let me do these video comparisons. If you like this video, please leave a like and consider subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any further content. And that's pretty much it for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time. Ciao!